Big news coming out today about the Microsoft and the Blizzard merger, particularly over in the UK. It looks like they have shut this thing down. And so we're going to go into exactly what that means over here in the States and everywhere else, and if this could still possibly go through. So let's go ahead through this article that just came out today by Vox titled, "It's Almost Game Over for Microsoft's Big Video Game Merger." The future of the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal is looking dark thanks to the UK. Okay, let's get into it. All right, Microsoft's massive $69 billion acquisition of video game giant Activision Blizzard was dealt a major and possible game ending blow this week. The United Kingdom's Competition and Market Authority, CMA, announced on Wednesday that it has decided not to allow the deal to go through. And I don't know about most of you, but I don't think most gamers think that this merger is a good thing for gaming. I imagine that Microsoft was particularly trying to acquire Blizzard so they could have exclusivity on a lot of the most popular games out there right now. And if that is the case, then that means that a lot of people who own other consoles won't have access to it. So a good majority of gamers, unless you play the Xbox or unless you play on the PC, would be quite disappointed if Microsoft was allowed to acquire Activision Blizzard. Okay, while this isn't the final word, Microsoft and Activision have at least one extra file, as they can and do plan to appeal. It's now very much an uphill battle. It shows how, as some U.S. efforts to rein in big tech have floundered, other countries are getting results. The CMA's ruling applies only to the UK, but the global nature of the gaming business means its decision likely will be global too. And I don't know about you, but that's one of the things that I've really noticed is that the UK and EU have been much better about controlling potential monopolies in the tech industry. One of the other big recent decisions that comes to my mind is when Mac was forced to use the USB-C instead of their proprietary charging cable. Right, that's one of the big ones that came out within this last year, and now we see it with Microsoft and Blizzard. And I personally, I'm glad to hear about this. Some people might not be because of money and stock share prices. But as a gamer, I think I couldn't be happier. Now, while Microsoft and Activision Blizzard are both major players in the gaming industry and shouldn't have much trouble carrying on separately, this development doesn't hurt their ambitions to get even bigger. At the time of the merger was announced, January 2022, Microsoft said the deal would make it the third largest gaming company by revenue in the world, behind Tencent and Sony. But there were concerns from gamers and Microsoft's competition that the company would make Activision's titles exclusive to its own platforms now or in the future, like what I was saying, locking them into Microsoft's ecosystem or forcing them to switch to it if they wanted to keep playing their favorite Activision games. Yeah, you see, well, the problem with Tencent and Sony is they are kind of monopolies, especially Tencent. Tencent, in my opinion, is a monopoly coming out of China. But Sony is also a government-sponsored company. And so, part of the reason why Sony has done so well is because they got so much extra funding and money from their government. And good for them. They still play fair within the international market. Now, that's not something that I feel comfortable saying about Tencent. I don't know if they play fair, in my opinion. Okay. The UK authorities' decision is also an obstacle that Microsoft didn't expect. Microsoft has spent years trying to build up its reputation as the good big tech company that plays well with others, including governments. Nah, I don't believe that for one second. I love Microsoft products, but they did get broken up because of monopoly a long time ago. Back in like the late 1990s? I don't even remember now. It's been so long. Um, but Bill Gates was he was very ambitious. He was very ambitious with taking control over certain industries in the tech market. And that's how people really became. You look at the Rockefellers and all these people. I mean, how did they become rich? They built monopolies. They, undercut all their competition on a level where they were losing money until their competitors sold out to them, and then they could control the prices within the market because there was no competition, right? So you see successful companies doing this all the time, and they've been doing it for the last 150 years, if not longer. Now, the UK authorities' decision is also an obstacle that Microsoft didn't expect. Microsoft has spent years, trying to build this reputation, but it audaciously made the largest acquisition in its history at a time when big tech companies are under more scrutiny than ever. This rebuke is the most significant sign yet that regulators aren't going for Microsoft's big move. And if they can't stop it in the US, they will elsewhere. And if they're willing to hit Microsoft, they'll go for just about anyone. Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, obviously, they're going to be hitting the biggest companies. They're going to be hitting Apple. They're going to be hitting Microsoft. They're going to be, possibly, who knows, Sony. But these big players who want to monopolize the industry, and those are the players that they really should be going after, not like the small mom and pop, newly founded game developing companies. For its part, Microsoft hit back with not so veiled threats about how the CMA's decision will hurt the UK's economy, as it will make it and possibly others reconsider their dealings in the country. I don't believe that for 1 second. They'll sell anything they can to anybody. That's how business works. Microsoft's Vice Chair and President Brad Smith told the BBC that this decision, I have to say, is probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain. Yeah. What? And that the European Union is a more attractive place to start a business than the United Kingdom. Well, okay. I don't. It's kind of like apples to oranges, you know what I mean? Or it's apples to apples. I mean, they're so similar in so many ways. Rarely do they make like they're pretty lockstep on a lot of things. So Activision Blizzard's take was similar. In a statement, the company said the report's conclusion are a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects. We will reassess our growth plan for the UK. Global innovators, large and small, will take note of that despite all its rhetoric. The UK is clearly closed for business. Now, I will tell you this: they create digital products, right? They create a digital product that is in English. So let's say they create it; it's all in English, and they sell it in the U.S. And then they see a market where they can make, I don't know, $200 million just by taking that exact same product and selling it over in the UK. Are they not going to do that because of this ruling? Absolutely not. They are going to sell that product in the UK. So these are really veiled threats that have no substance to them at all, in my opinion. Now, what it means for gamers is that assuming the CMA's decision holds, nothing will really change. They won't have to worry about being frozen out of their favorite Activision Blizzard games if they're not Xbox or PC users, or Microsoft refusing to make new versions of those games for non-Microsoft systems and platforms. Microsoft had made deals to keep some of those titles and platforms agnostic for a certain number of years to try to get regulators' approval, but rivals like Sony, which clearly has its own reasons for not wanting a major competitor to get any kind of advantage, contended that those concessions weren't enough. Yeah, it's one of those things like, why does Microsoft want Activision Blizzard? It's because they have some of the top games on the planet. Tens, hundreds of millions of people play these games, and they want to corner those specific players. Say like, A lot of people, they only play like 2 or 3 games on a regular basis. It's not like they're playing like 10 different video games. And when they find those 2 or 3 that they play, they might play that same game for the next 10, 15 years. So if they can own that IP and own that market, then they get all that revenue guaranteed and they don't have to share it. And they know that. And, the reason why these people at Activision are so upset or over at Microsoft is because they're getting a big upfront payout. They know, with this sale, they're like, great, we're going to sell this. We're going to get a whole bunch of Microsoft shares, or we're going to be able to, the shares of Blizzard or whatever are going to go through the roof. And then, then they can liquidate some of that and stick a lot of that in their pocket. That's why they're upset. They're not upset about you, the gamer, not getting a better product. I'll tell you that much. Okay. While Microsoft repeatedly contended that the merger, though huge, still wouldn't make it the dominant player in a crowded market, the CMA's reasoning for rejecting the deal was that it would make Microsoft too powerful in a subset of that market, cloud gaming. Microsoft has its Xbox Cloud Gaming and PC Game Pass offerings and has the Azure cloud computing platform. The UK regulators said cloud gaming was a rapidly growing segment of the gaming industry, and Microsoft's deal would give it too much of an advantage over competitors. Very rational decision, very rational. The CMA cited fears that Microsoft would have to increase the price of its Game Pass subscriptions to announce for the tens of billions of dollars it spent to acquire Activision, that it would make Activision's titles exclusive to its own service, and that the games were not open to computers that didn't have Windows operating systems. Look at that. Yeah, if that's not a monopoly, I don't know what is. They're like, okay, we buy all this IP, and then we immediately have to jack up all of our prices, and we're going to make it so it's only on our platforms. And Microsoft's saying like, oh no, it's not a monopoly. Look over there. We said, well, we're still going to allow a couple titles to be agnostic, platform agnostic for a couple of years. Yeah, right. Now, cloud gaming needs a free, competitive market to drive innovation and choice. That is best achieved by allowing the current competitive dynamics in cloud gaming to continue to do their job, Martin Coleman, who carried the panel that investigated the deal, said in a statement. Yeah, the more platforms that you can put a game, the better. I honestly have a Mac Mini. That's what I use. And for a lot of these games, like I'm having to use Shadow or some other type of virtual machine just to play them. And I understand a lot of times there's additional coding or it's more work, more development work to make it available on lots of platforms. Now you can apply that same thing into these cloud gaming where all of a sudden they're just like everybody's forced to use Steam or everybody's forced to use X, Y, and Z market only because of this monopoly that exists or a monopoly that exists. That's all an example. And so it's the more that they can actually broaden this, create availability and choice to the consumer, the more likely we're going to get good prices. And the more likely, we can play the way that we want to play. That's what gaming should be all about, looking to serve the consumer. So the CMA has right to reject Microsoft's effort to settle the investigation with behavioral commitments, which are difficult to monitor and easily outpaced by developments in fast-moving markets. The Open Markets Institute, an anti-monopoly advocacy group, said in a statement, adding that it urges other competition authorities scrutinizing this deal to take the CMA's lead and block it outright. Yeah, I'm surprised anybody would even be considering it. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick had a statement of his own saying, in part, the UK regulator's decision was far from the final word on this deal and that he was frustrated by the hurdles and delays. Until now, it looked like the biggest threat to the Microsoft deal would come from the U.S., as its Federal Trade Commission, chaired by antitrust hawk Lina Khan, sued to block the merger. But there was no guarantee that the FTC would win that case, and the onus would be on the agency to prove that the merger will unfairly harm competition before courts that tend to rule in favor of businesses. We're still waiting for the European Union's decision on the merger, but the EU's competition regulator, the European Commission, has been very vocal about its desire to check big tech's power. Well, did we not just review the exact reasons why it's bad for the consumer and how it creates monopoly? Like, they'll instantly have to increase the price of the Game Pass to even pay for the merger. And the way that they're going to be able to do that or justify it is literally by monopolizing or making a lot of these titles only available through their specific Game Pass or cloud gaming platform. And then, even the ones that are agnostic, they're eventually going to force people to move over there, and they're going to make people use Microsoft in order to game. So while Microsoft and Activision have said they're surprised at the UK's decision, well, they shouldn't be. There is some precedent, like all anti-monopoly law that's ever existed as a precedent. I'm not a lawyer. Everything that I say in this video is my own opinion. Okay, just to lay that out, this is all opinion. So the CMA also blocked Meta's $350 million acquisition of Giphy in 2021. That decision was upheld in late 2022, forcing Meta to divest the GIF database and search engine. Microsoft clearly thought it knew enough and had done enough to make this work. Now it looks like the UK's Competition and Markets Authority will be its final boss battle. I mean, you see bad rulings all the time, motivated by money. So this could potentially get pushed through in the end, but I think it will likely stay. And I think it will likely affect the merger internationally. If you like news about gaming, I'm always covering cool stuff like this. I cover a lot of the new games coming out. We got Diablo 4 coming out here pretty soon. I did the beta. We got another beta gameplay coming out here soon. We got Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I do all kinds of cool games, big game release stuff, big game news. If you like this type of stuff, like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys, and you guys have a good night.